Hello, and welcome to the KCK Inspiring Moments with Kaylin radio show. I am your host, Kaylin John Louis, and I am so excited to be on the air with you all today. I hope everyone is having an amazing day and you've had time to relax or just take a moment to chill. As I always remind everybody, there are a few things that I hope that you are taking care of and you are protecting. The first would be your physical health. Make sure that you are always making sure you have your medicines and that you are getting your routine vaccinations. We do have a lot of sickness that is arising, especially if you are like me, who is on a college campus. This is the time of the year where people are getting sick and the weather is changing. So please make sure that you are remaining physically healthy as well as mentally healthy, just as you would go to a doctor if you were hurting. Make sure you are going to your therapist and talking about the different things that you are dealing with. Even if you don't have a therapist, talk to somebody. Don't allow the things you're dealing with to stay inside mentally, because you want to make sure, just like you are physically well, you are mentally well. And most importantly, just be careful of your surroundings. Our world is crazy, and I do want to make sure that people are using the buddy system no matter where you are going, or that you always tell somebody your location so that they are able to identify you in the case of an emergency. Also, before we go any further, I encourage you to download the Hallelujah 95.3 app so that you can listen to the show on the go on your electronic devices. And I also ask that you tag a young adult, tag everyone you know, especially young adults today, because this upcoming discussion is going to be powerful. And I say that because I have some amazing guests with me today who are going to be discussing a topic that I feel is very, very necessary for the times we are in now. Just to get into it, in this country, the founding fathers established a nation built on democratic ideals, which everyone knows. In the Constitution, they outlined freedoms, including the right to vote and the right to be civically engaged in society. And because voting is one of those freedoms that has been held to the highest importance, it has taken a while for people of color to really be able to get that right and to exercise it. Well, now we're here in 2023. There have been several controversial laws passed and legislation causing us to have to protect our rights like never before. Meaning we need everyone's vote. We need everyone's voice to be heard, and we need everyone in the polls. While many people have taken it upon themselves to encourage everyone to vote and get everyone together, I decided I wanted to have a personal call to action for youth adults everywhere. Because if you've listened to this radio show before, back in 2022, I did the same thing where I talked about voting. It matters. And I had two parts. But right now, it is so important that we talk about the fact that voting matters. So today, I and a few other guests will be discussing the topic voting, it matters like never before. While we are having them come in, I'm going to allow my guests to introduce themselves so you can get to know a little bit more about them. And I will hand it over to the first guest, Mr. Travius Copeland.
Greetings, everyone. I am Travius Copeland, a first-year pre-pharmacy scholar striking from Chattahoochee, Florida, and I attend the illustrious Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University.
Yes, what you know about them Rattlers. We'll go on to our next guest, Miss Nia Terry.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nia Nicole Terry. I am a first-year psychology major, international studies minor at Spelman College. And I hail from Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm here to talk about voting and what it means specifically for the Black community.
Thank you so much for being a part. I am very, very happy. And if y'all know, that's my best friend. So woo. And last but certainly not least, we'll have our final guest, Miss Marie Radigan, to introduce herself.
Hello, everybody. My name is Marie Radigan, and I too am a proud two-time graduate from the illustrious Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University. I'm a civil rights organizer slash advocate and the third vice president for the Tallahassee branch of the NAACP.
Thank you so much for being on. Every single last person who is here to me has a voice that I believe is important and can really share some good information about this topic. And so while we're on the topic, we're talking about voting. It matters like never before. Let's go ahead and just pose the obvious question. Why does everyone believe it is important to be civically engaged? We can start in the reverse order of how we introduce. So I'll allow Miss Radigan to go first, and then we'll go to Nia and then Travius.
Yeah, so I definitely know that it is important for us to be civically engaged, simply because we're going to uphold democracy, right? And this is a positive way for everyone to be engaged, for everyone to also be involved and to make change and let your voice be heard.
I too agree that it is important to be in that stance because we are the people who are here to vote. We are the change that we want to see today. They call us the future, but I believe we are the present. What about you, Nia?
I would like to say that voting is important not just during the presidential election years, but also during the years in between. Your legislators on the state and local levels, your senators, your House reps, all of them affect your daily lives way more than a president ever will. And they stay in office much longer, and the access that they have to resources to change your lives gets higher and higher the longer that they stay in office. So if you vote them in once, it's likely that they stay for the rest of their careers. Look at Nancy Pelosi. She's been in office forever, and she probably won't be leaving anytime soon. So understand that who you vote for now can matter for your kids 20, 30 years from now. So make sure that when you're voting, you pay attention to who they are and what their values are. And if you see a policy that you don't like, then you need to make sure that you make your voice heard about that. And the easiest way to do that is to elect someone who aligns with your own values.
Very good tips and good information. Let's go over to Travius.
I believe voting is extremely important because I believe people always have the common misconception that it really doesn't matter. And then after they decide not to vote, people get elected in that they don't want elected in. And that's when it's like, oh, well, we don't have a say so. Oh, well, we can't do this. Well, we can't do that. And they forget that they had that say so when the ballots were out. And it's very important to just be mindful of that because voting does matter. The votes matter, counting matters, all of it matters because at the end of the day, these are the people who are going to represent you. Because when it's time to talk about stuff that's happening in the schools, they're not going to go to every single house with a student and ask them about it. They're going to talk to the superintendent. They're going to talk to school board members. They're going to talk to these people who you decided to elect in. And that goes the same way at the state level and the national level.
I agree. And if I were to chime in on why I believe voting is important, it would simply be because of the fact that people fought for that right. I think that within itself, along with everything that everyone has mentioned, is important because we did have our own founding fathers, our ancestors who took the time to prepare us or took the time to deal with the racism or the different inequalities that they had to face in order to be able to speak up and use their voice. Especially me being an African American woman, knowing that there was a point where I would not be able to vote, where I would not be able to exercise that right, to me has shown me that I need to make sure I'm here and not just voting for myself, but encouraging other people to do the same. And I want to be able to share this with you all because, of course, in getting ready to do this show, I looked up some information and I did some research. And according to the Center for Information and Research on Civic Learning and Engagement, aka Circle, they said after the midterm elections, they reported in April 2023 that 23% of young adults nationally turned out to vote. 23%, with Florida having 22.4% and Georgia 26%. That is very low in my opinion. I mean, it has grown over the last few years if we look at that. However, there are so many people, like Travius said, who do a lot of talking but don't put a lot of action to that talk. And if you don't realize it now from the legislation that has been passed, from the different things you are seeing people having to talk about that we wish we would not have to revert back to, it really should tell you that it is important that you use your voice. And if you don't think your voice matters, you need to wake up, because every vote, every time you share something, every time you encourage somebody to be engaged in their community and their nation is a reason to know that your voice matters. When you all hear that number, what does that strike to you? What does hearing that information think? I will let Travius go first.
When I hear that information, hear those numbers, it makes me feel like we as like the youth, because like you said, I don't even want to say the future, like we're the present. Us being in the now, especially, I don't, me personally, I don't even care if you just turned 18 yesterday. The time is now. So I think we need to grow upon actually getting out there and doing things instead of just going to our social media sites like Instagram or TikTok just to make jokes about these things, because a lot of this is not a joke. Like, this is real life. These are situations we are putting ourselves in by just being generally lazy, because it doesn't take a lot to vote. If we're being completely real, you go to a precinct and you bubble in the ballot with your pen, put it in the machine, it's done. So it's like, if we put the same effort into doing other things that we did, it would evenly match out to, getting those votes out, being able to, vote as the youth and getting those numbers up.
I agree. We spend a lot of time on social media. If we took the same time to share a post as we did to tell somebody to vote or to be at the polls when it's time to be there, I feel like we'd have a lot more change and a lot more action. What do you think, Nia?
I think our generation, especially for the younger part of our generation, born around 2005, which is just starting to vote this year, I think we've been trained that the government sucks and there's nothing that we can do about it. So many of our parents have told us that the government is against us, and at this point, there's no changing it. So at this point, we might as well give up. And I think that's a horrible way to look at it. I think coming out in great numbers in a generation that knows the government is wrong, that knows so many bad things are happening, that knows that laws are being passed to ban books, that knows that laws are being passed to take away voter rights. We know and we can see it and we've called it out. But sitting there and not voting and not doing anything about it simply because you think that you don't have power is ignoring your constitutional right and honestly your constitutional obligation to be an active citizen of this country. One of the ways that we do that is by exercising our right to vote. So many of us volunteer, so many of us pay taxes, so many of us go out and do all of these other things related to civic engagement. But the second that voting comes into play, we say, oh, it's rigged. The election is rigged. There's no way that we can win, when really our minds are rigged. We're sitting here telling ourselves and lying to ourselves like voting doesn't work. But when we showed up for Obama and when we've showed up for presidents in the past where the entire Black community, entire communities of color have showed up behind a person, then we know that we can actually make real change. And we've started to see that in some states where the first Black governor or the first Black this or the first Hispanic governor or the first Hispanic this has been voted into office simply because so many people showed up and voted behind them. We blocked attacks on Roe v. Wade and attacks on women's bodies because women decided that we all needed to get behind it. It's not that the election is rigged. It's that our minds are rigged. But once we unrig our minds and figure out that we actually can make genuine change, then our voting actually matters. But it matters when all of us go out to vote, not just one person.
That is true. We can't just all sit here and say that it's not important. that we don't have the option and we don't have the right when it's right in front of our faces. What do you think, Marie?
I think that there were a lot of valid points that were made. I think something that we need to definitely talk about is communication. How are young people, Gen Z and millennials, being communicated with, and are we meeting them where they are, right? As you all may know, that I've ran for office before here in Tallahassee, and as a young person, I know that for most of the times when it comes down to politics, right, we're being talked at and not talked to. And I think that's where there's a gap where young people are basically turning off their ears when it comes on to policy, right? But despite those numbers, in actuality, young people have been turning out by the masses to go out and vote. So, despite contrary belief, despite those numbers, if we actually look at it holistically, young people are turning up to vote, turning out to vote, right? Something that's imperative for us to know is previously someone mentioned into Gen Z, right? Gen Z has actually been the biggest voting bloc generation compared to millennials. And you may say, why is that happening, or why does the data show that? The data shows that for multiple reasons. One, because of COVID. Two, the Gen Z witnessed Donald Trump in office, right? And all of the laws that he put in place to attack Black, Brown, the LGBTQIA community, and even those who are white, who are not as privileged. We've seen so many attacks, especially Gen Z. Now it's just baffling, and I'm so happy to be having this conversation that George Floyd happened, right? Breonna Taylor happened. We've seen, Gen Z has seen all of these things that happen, and their generation is the generation that's saying, no, we are not for this. We are standing up and we are going to the polls and we're voting despite contrary beliefs, even with affirmative action, even with Roe versus Wade. But I think the beautiful thing about this is in 2028, Gen Z and millennials are going to make up over 50% of the voting block. In 2024, Gen Z and millennials are going to make up about 35 to 37% of the voting block. So it is our duty to vote simply because we have the power to shift and change the narrative when it comes down to who we are putting in office. If we can vote them in, we can also vote them out if they are not aligning with our values.
I love the points that everyone is mentioning. And I do want to even say with the comments that Marie made that it is a thing. And I know they report a lot about how 18 to 24 is the biggest statistic that doesn't vote, but I would argue it's anywhere between 18 to about 35 or 40 where we have to be those who are really getting out and voting. I think a lot of times people tend to think about, even as everyone has mentioned, that we're voting people in office, they're the people who are going to take care of us. Those people that are placed in office are literally being run by the people. We are the ones that are telling them our views. They are just the public voice for us. And we have to remember as a group that, as Marie stated, as Nia stated, as I'm sure most of us will stay in this entire show, that, like you said, when you vote these people in, you vote them in with the intent that they're going to uphold everything that you believe in. When they decide to misconstrue or use the power that they have for bad and they do not uphold what you ask them to, that is a point for everyone to realize that it is corrupt. And there are times, I'm not saying that everyone in office is bad. That is not the point of this show. The point of this show is to let you know that you matter, and so does your voice. Your ability to be able to stand up for what's right, whether right is right, wrong is wrong, whether you go one way or go the other. It doesn't matter where you go. The importance is that you vote, and that you vote for the things that you believe in. We have a lot of issues that go on the legislative session every year. As Nia stated, a lot of times people will vote for the big elections, but everyone forgets about the local things. And that's what I want everyone listening to hear. We have a lot of stuff going on locally that is impacting everyday education, that is impacting everyday work, everyday life. And it is important that, as much as I, as a person, used to not watch the news, used to not pay attention, the more and more I get older and the more I see things directly affecting my demographic or affecting the groups that I am a part of socially, the more it causes me to want to be involved. And I am asking, and I am really pushing people to realize you need to do the same. Please do not sit here and say you did not vote or you did not know that voting was a thing that was happening. There are so many resources between your phone, between TV, between radio, between the many different media channels that you can see that will tell you what's going on, that will say, okay, if you need to vote, there are precincts in this area, that area. That is what the news is for. It is broadcasting information. I do not want anyone sitting at home saying that they did not hear what was going on or that they did not make it away. And I also decided to research some reasons why young people have said they haven't voted, or just people in general. And the three biggest things are: one, because it's a habit formation, meaning they know that voting is a habit that's formed over time, but they have done it less frequently because they've had fewer opportunities to vote, mainly because they feel that they only have to vote in the big elections. That's one thing. Number two, their schedules. Everybody's schedules, especially when you're in college and you're a young adult, can sometimes keep them from being able to register to vote. Or the third reason being that when they participate civically in other ways. And I want to touch on this because we love to turn out to the protests, and we love to turn out to the movements, and we love to go and flood social media. But when it comes to the voting time and the actual day of being there to exercise your right, we're missing people. And I need everybody to realize those things are just, they're important. It's important to stand in large groups and stand together, but it's also important to unite in this time. Now, when you see the last legislative session, right? We've seen things in Florida, we've seen things in the nation, we've seen things in Georgia, everywhere. There have been laws that made it difficult for people of color. And I just want to hear you all's perspectives about how you feel about these legislations. Do you agree or disagree with them? What do you think we can do to change them? Whatever you are comfortable with sharing, because there have been a lot of controversial things, and we do have to use our voices to stand up. I will let Ms. Radigan go first, and then Travius, and then Nia.
Wow, that's a brilliant question, right? Because in 2022, I was a legislative aide. So I had a front row seat on how these laws were being crafted to impact us, right? The everyday people. But this past year, I was a civic engagement director for a youth-based organization. And nothing has changed. However, the laws just have gotten worse. We can see nationally, right? There has been a shift in voting laws, and there has been 323 laws that has been either put in place or presented, right, before legislators to restrict uh, people from getting out to vote. And this is bills that were introduced in all 45 states. Just imagine that. We're only in September, rolling in October, and 323 bills have been introduced to stop people from voting. We can say here in Florida, right? SB 90, right? The vote by mail, where now you have to provide your driver's license or the last four of your social. We've seen SB 7050, And that is threatening organizations who are trying to register people to vote with a fine that's $50,000, right? This is crazy because that is our constitutional right to get out and vote. And we know that Black and brown people are the majority of the voting bloc that's going to be affected, because we've seen Black and brown people turn out in numbers by vote by mail during COVID. We've seen this, right? So this is nothing new. All of these laws have been put in place specifically to water down our vote and to make sure that we don't go out and vote. And if I'm not encouraging you or pushing you to vote, hearing this alone should be triggering, because if your vote did not count, all of these bills and laws being introduced and passed would not have been put in place. Something else that I wanted to add is September 19th was National Voters Registration Day, right? And we've seen everybody across social media put up, make sure you go out and vote. This is an important day. But did you send 3 of your friends that same post and ask them, were they registered to vote? Because now, if your friends or even your family members are usually voting by mail, that has been purged and everybody has to start all over again. The John Lewis Voting Rights Act was also reintroduced on that same day to strengthen the Voting Rights Act of 1965. I think we need to stop relying on social media and we need to get out. Knock on these doors. If y'all are in dorms, y'all need to knock on y'all dorms. FAMU and FSU, we have voters precincts on our campus. We are, FAMU being the only historically Black university that has a voters precinct on campus. So you have no excuse to not turn up and turn out and vote. If you are going to go to these concerts, we know that homecoming is coming up. I need you to make sure that you are registering to vote, because these bills are attacking us. The next generation, Gen Z and millennials, are movers and shakers, and we know that we're turning up in numbers in these next few years, and that's why they are putting these bills in place.
That's a lot of great information. And if you're listening, you need to be taking notes, because these are new things that you should include in your thoughts. What about you, Travius? You've seen this legislation. What is your reaction to everything that's going on? We can't hear you. Uh-oh. I cannot hear. We'll come back. We'll start with Nia and then come back.
I think on my side, I'm in Georgia right now. So this has entirely different, well, it's similar implications, but it's a little bit different. I am in a place in which we have, in Atlanta, Georgia, we have Cop City right now. Cop City protests are going on and youth are all over the place. I've seen people on my campus painting signs. We've been talking about how this legislation and how horrible it is that we're implementing something such as Cop City. But we're also the same people that voted the people into office that are making Cop City happen. So in a way, we kind of made our own bed, so now we have to lie in it. If you're going to be mad about the legislation that's being made, if you're going to be mad about the book bans, about the education laws, if you're going to be mad about all of this stuff that's happening, you also need to be upset with the fact that you voted for someone, or you didn't vote at all and ended up with these consequences. I know it sucks to critique yourself in that way, but realizing that your vote matters just as much as this legislation matters is important. If you want your kids to go to a school where Black history is taught, then you need to make sure that the superintendent of your school district cares about Black history. If you want to go to a school district where you don't have to worry about school shootings or mass shootings, then you need to go and live in a district and vote for someone who cares about gun violence and who is doing everything that they can to mitigate gun violence. If you want to live in a society where XYZ, then you need to make sure that you vote for someone who XYZs. And you need to make sure that when you're looking at bills, you actually read what they say, even the fine print at the bottom, and make sure that you read and understand exactly what you're voting for, because most of the time it can go back and get revised. But just picking something because you think that you like it and you think that it's the best that you can offer, that's not going to help you. You want to send it back as many times as possible to make sure that it gets right. Just like when you revise an essay for your class, if you want a 100%, then you're going to need to revise it 6, 7, 8 times. You're going to need to go to office hours. Just like for this, you're going to need to go out and vote, and you're going to need to take the revisions every single time until you get something that works for you. I don't want to say don't compromise, but read, read and vote, because the only way that you're going to get this legislation to change, the only way that people of color are truly going to be free, and the only way that we're truly going to have an education system that values us and that sees us, is if we vote and make sure that they see us in the voting box and in the polls. Otherwise, we're doing all of this protesting for nothing.
That's some important points. You know, you hear the fact that there are so many people who see this legislation, and even as you say, revise, and as Ms. Marie talks about the fact that there are new things that are just being dropped in here, all this information that you all are sharing. For those listening, I'm sure a few people, this is new information. This is new things they haven't heard about. And I pop in just to chime in to say you need to be involved and be focused, because you can hear things like this going on and see what is actually changing and what your votes are doing or not doing to impact the legislation. What do you think, Travis? Uh-oh. While he is getting that together, we do apologize. There are a little bit of difficulties. However, even with him, I'm sure he'll end up sharing his perspective in just a second, but we talk about the fact that, or I'll share my perspective when it comes to how I felt this legislation has really caused people to see things differently, because I know even for me, it was an eye opener to know that future generations, like my god brother or my god siblings, or all those who may look up to me at a later point, are going to have to live in a world, if things are not changed, where they have to be worried about going to school and being able to learn their history for what it is, or being able or not being able to learn what their history is because of the fact that everything is being censored. To know that when they get older, that the rights, reproductive rights for women are changing. Being able to protect yourself and being able to find that contraception, or even being able to just protect yourself and have certain rights as a woman, are different. Even knowing the fact that there are so many things going on in our world, and we are still fighting for the things that happened in the past, when we have problems of today and we're still somehow tracking back to the future. We always talk about how we don't want history to repeat itself and how we don't want things to keep happening, but somehow we keep allowing the same things to happen. We say things are good and we make up some laws and we talk with people and we have conversations, yet we end up right back in the same place of not knowing what's going on. And we have to make it a point to know that if we don't want to keep seeing things from the past come back into our future, that we have to make things happen. You got to put people in office who are going to push the current agendas. We don't want to revert back to the past agendas and the past motives of those who were in there, because what is it? The past. We are now in the present and we are heading towards our future. I don't want to have to keep dealing with the fact that we have to hear that people are not able to use their voice properly. People cannot feel comfortable in their own skin or in their own places because, yeah, in the past, when they had all those issues with inequalities and racism and different things, there were generations who may have been a little bit silently quiet about it. But as Radigan stated, we are in Gen Z. Gen Z, everyone in my generation, we are going to push for what we want. We are going to push for the things we believe in. And if y'all don't believe that it will happen, you have seen it in all of the things that have happened. Even when the day they said they overturned Roe v. Wade, the amount of protests and social media posts and things that went out on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, just from that one event should show you that it's going to be the same way. And I don't want any of that to affect the past or the present that we are in, because I don't want to keep reverting back to the past. And even as we pose that question, is there anything else anyone wants to share, even hearing that, before we move on to the next part?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know a lot of people are like, I wish I was in the civil rights era, or I wish I was in the woman rights era. Baby, you're in that era right now. You are in that era right now where Roe versus Wade was overturned, affirmative action was overturned. We've seen the Voting Rights Act of 1965, Section 3 and Section 4 being gutted, and now we only have Section 2. And if we only have Section 2, my God, spare life, that also does not be eliminated or demolished. We've seen these redistricting maps that here in Florida eliminated 50% of African American representation. So don't say you wish you were in that era, because baby, this is an era right now. And if you are not at the table, you're on the table. And that means you need to pull up. Tell your friends to pull up to the voting ballots. Tell your friends that before y'all go out and party and go see Meg Thee Stallion and go see Little Durk and go see Kodak Black and go see all of these celebrities, especially because homecoming is coming up. I hope y'all hear me. Y'all better be at Frenchtown Rising, shameless plug. But make sure that you are registered to vote, okay? Make sure you are registered to vote, please.
It is of the utmost importance that we are registered to vote. It is of the utmost importance that we use our voice. I see Nia, you want to chime something in, please.
I think people I think we underestimate ourselves and overestimate ourselves at the same time. We're the same generation that decided that we didn't want a Trump rally, so we just bought a bunch of tickets on TikTok and then didn't show up. Like, think about that. We literally gutted entire rallies. We trolled politicians. We have done so many forms of activism and so many forms of resilience. Voting is also a form of resilience. I need people to understand that voting, so many people view voting as doing what the system wants us to do. And that's fine. You can view it that way, but understand that voting the way that they don't want you to vote is an even more powerful form of resistance. You're using the system against itself. Do that. Don't just go out and protest, because honestly, that's the playbook that they've given you. They're giving you the playbook of the civil rights movement, which is go out and protest, ask for a permit, like ask for permission to go protest out in the streets so that we know where you are, so that we can give you security, and so that we can make sure that we control what you protest about, how you protest, when you protest, where you protest, why you protest. You want to know one thing that they can't do? They can't tell you what you vote for, why you vote for, how you vote for, who you vote for. They can tell you who you protest for. They can tell you when you protest. They can tell you where you protest, but they can't tell you that about when you're voting. So make sure that you use that to your advantage. Voting can have the element of surprise. We don't necessarily know how people are going to vote, and we don't really know how Gen Z is going to vote, because in a sense, we haven't really seen the force of Gen Z, the full force of Gen Z, go out and vote like like they should be. And so once we see that, we can make genuine change. We can change the polls. We can flip politicians out, just like Ms. Radigan said. If we voted them in, then we can vote them out. But the only way that works is that if you make an unpredictable choice to use your right to vote. I know it sounds weird and that voting should be predictable, but in this point in society, voting isn't the thing that we see as a way to change things. So be unpredictable for once and vote. Don't just go out and protest with signs. That's good. It brings attention to the issue, but it doesn't necessarily change it. Make sure that you are using your right, because that's the right that they don't want you to get. Obviously not. They're attacking it with every single voter suppression law and all of the gerrymandering that they're doing. If they figure out that you know that you can vote, then they will go after and gut it. So before they have the chance to change those laws, you need to go ahead and get out there and vote so that they can't take the right away, because they will if you're not using it.
That's some important points. And I want to make the point of everybody wants to be an influencer, right? Everybody wants to run and be able to say, I'm doing makeup content or hair content. Why not do content about voting? Why not share with other people the importance of being engaged in society? We all want to make our voices heard. We all want to be seen by people and get our likes and get our comments and our follows and our shares. But a lot of people don't want to sit here and talk about the traditional things or the things that quote unquote may be boring. But while it may seem boring, it is impacting your everyday life. I'm going to try again and let's see. I know Travius, again, we've been talking about legislation and just about how everything has made us feel. Let's get your reaction and just kind of share with the audience how you feel about everything and what you really think we can do to change this.
Okay, so before the technical difficulties, I heard what Miss Radican was saying about like the new legislation, and I believe it's important to take that stuff and use it as like reinforcement, the same way students and the youth are so used to like their parents and like they are seeing what some are on the more rebellious end, and they use what their parents say and they go against it, not because they believe against it, but because their parents said so. So I feel like understanding that these politicians who are being put into place because of the lack of voting or the lack of voting in the right direction, um, seeing that they are also saying, hey, let's not do this, this, and this. I think seeing how much it makes them feel that they feel like they should be able to take away things, it should make you want to go out and do it more. Just because, not because you have a certain feeling towards it, but because the fact that somebody would be trying to take some away from me, I would think it's all the more powerful. It's just like robbing you of money, robbing you of your joy. Because you want it from me so bad, I feel like it's all the more important. So I feel like that goes the same way with like voting, going out and being able to do certain things and things of that nature. So I honestly believe like with voting, I don't want to say being so simple, but the process of voting being so easy, I feel like why not? Why not? You see people trying to take it away. You see people trying to alter what you can do, alter what you can believe. That should make you want to go out and stand up for not even just like-minded people, but stand up for yourself, honestly. So like because I know I had technical difficulties earlier, I don't want to be too long,
It's
but that
okay.
is certainly how I feel.
And that's a valid point when it comes to the fact that there are a lot of people who are seeing things right there. That is a good point to say. If somebody's going to try and take something away from me, why not snatch it back? But it's also the sense of we are so in control. There's so many, let me put it like this. There's so many things in life that we are out of control, that are out of our control. There's so many things that we cannot change. We have unforeseen events like COVID and police brutality and different things that we wish never happened, things that we wish we never had to see. But there are some things that are within our reach. We may not be able to all run for political office because we are not all built for that role. We may not all be able to speak out and share things that we know, but we all have the option and the right to show up on the day of voting and be able to pencil in that those people we want in office. And I think that I was speaking with some people, right? And a lot of times we hear from older generations that they feel like we're just lazy and we don't want to vote. But at the same time, we see from them sometimes that they get so frustrated that they decide not to vote, or they say, I'm just not going to do it because it takes out my frustration. And a lot of times that causes this big divide between younger generations and older generations when it comes to voting. And I really think that that divide pushes people away from voting because they see so much drama between the younger generations and the older generations' perspectives on voting. And so I really do want to pose that question to everybody. What can we do to mesh together younger and older generations so that we all can unite for the cause of voting? What are some things we can do to really make effective partnerships between youth and adults so that when voting day happens, we're all on the same page? We're there to vote and we're going to work together to make this happen. We can start with Ms. Radigan.
Thank you. I was going to say my first word would be communication. My God, the ability to communicate with each other, right? I think that's the first thing that needs to be addressed. And, someone mentioned earlier that voting for us is easy, but we have to remember not too long ago, y'all, there were so many things put in place. You had to know the amount of beans that were in a jar, there were poll taxes, there were literacy tests, there were so many things that were put in place for the generation before us not to be able to vote. So I think communication is key. And for young people, we have to be open minded. And for older people as well, I mentioned something earlier, right? Not talking at us, but talking to us, right? Because at the end of the day, our Gen Z and millennial, we're getting ready to make up that majority of the voting block, and we want to make sure that we're voting in favor of our generation, right, to come, and the generation that was before us. I think for younger people, the way how you can get active, my God, sorry y'all, I'm a God person too, but attend council meetings, please, because we've seen recently that there was a property tax, 8%, 10%, that was passed yesterday night. Attend council meetings, please. Join youth advisory groups, boards, participate in forums like this one to let your voices be heard, as well as older people, or should I say much seasoned people, are going to be listening to the radio or the newspaper. So trying to see if you can do op-eds to kind of create this conversation, once again, communicating to see how can you be that change and how can you bridge the two generations, because we do know that there is a divide, but the divide comes from the lack of communication as well as not being able to hear each other out.
That is true. We have a lot of people who are doing a lot of this and not a lot of listening. They're doing a lot of running their mouth and they're not really trying to hear the views of everyone else. If you look at it, a lot of times, even when there's disagreements, like we see a lot of things politically, even when there's debates and there's whatnot, a lot of times you see them doing a lot of talking. They're just waiting for the next point to say. They're waiting to jump in where they fit in instead of really hearing people out. I think if we as a community take that time to really hear each other out. Obviously, we're not going to all agree on the same ideas. We're not going to agree on the same principles and the same ways of life that we all live by. However, we can agree on the fact that our lives are important and that the things that we want to accomplish, the things that we want to do, can only happen if we unite together to be here for the cause. What about you, Travius? What are some things you think we can do to really unite younger and older generations so that we come together for the cause?
I think a very important thing is understanding that teamwork makes the dream work. I feel like the disconnect becomes where the youth want to be wise and act on things, and then the elders want to be wise and act on things when it's really just as simple as merging the elders' wisdom with the youth actions and starting off with something just as, I don't want to say simple, but starting off with something that's just separate as that in order to put it together instead of trying to merge everything from everybody all at once. That becomes chaotic. That's why even with these, like, since we're talking about voting, even with these members, we have different members doing different things. Every member doesn't do the same thing, and that's for a reason. So the same way that is for a reason, I believe it's important to have that connect with those different generations to understand what generation needs to focus on what, so that we're able to work together, but in a sense of divide and conquering type of work together, rather than just trying to put all equal heads together.
Yeah, we do have to allocate different things to everybody. Everybody has their role, everybody has their target audience. Some things we talk about, older people cannot understand or will not be able to reach, or some things that our elders say we may not be able to communicate as effectively. But really having conversations like the ones we're having today really do help. And I do hope in the future to be able to have that conversation with youth and with elders so we can really hear each other's perspectives and get on one accord. Nia, what are you thinking with this question? How are you feeling?
I think one of the big debates that happens between more seasoned members of our community and younger members of our community is more seasoned members saying, "Give me respect." And then the younger members are saying, "But respect is earned." And then they go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth for hours and hours about how respect is earned, but I want my respect. I think it's more important to foster that relationship of respect. I think elders shouldn't assume that respect is not earned and that it should just be given to them. But just as Ms. Radigan said, talking to us and not at us will easily achieve that. We are more than happy to listen to you if we feel like you're not yelling at us. And for our younger members, please keep your minds open and your ears open, because similarly to how Ms. Radigan said, we are living in the same time that our grandparents were fighting in. And we're fighting in the same time that they were fighting in. The Voting Rights Act, affirmative action, and Roe v. Wade were all happening in the late 60s, early 70s. And now we're doing the same thing right now. They were about 18 years old when they were fighting it, and we're about 18 years old when we're fighting this fight. So be prepared to listen to them. Be prepared to hear them, because they did the same thing about 50, 60 years ago. They know what they're talking about. But at the same time, understand that you also have, and I need my elders to understand this, we also have some caveats that weren't there. You guys got the TV. We got social media, Apple, iPhones, and everything else that comes with that. And just like the television came with different implications for how it controls how we disperse information, social media has done the same. And working with that is going to be a little bit different. We're going to have more creative ideas. We have a different understanding of how sociological concepts work. The sociological concept of gender has changed. The sociological concept and our understanding of race has changed. The way that we view classes and economy, the economy itself and inflation has changed. The kids that you're working with now, most of us grew up in a recession. That changes the way that we view how we should be spending money. It changes the way that we should attack social concepts. And so we're going to have some different opinions about how problems should be handled. But historically, our elders can give us guidance and wisdom on how to tackle these problems so that we don't make the same mistakes they made, and so that we can make change happen faster. Bridging that gap and respecting each other's, and rather than measuring each other's generational trauma against each other, respecting each other's struggle and moving forward is the best way that we can handle that. The only way that we're going to be able to change the way that society is and change the voting numbers is if everyone decides to actually sit down and listen. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So use your 2 ears to listen more than you talk.
Great, great, great points. And as we get ready to wrap up, I'm going to let you all hear these last few words from me before we close the show. And that is, one, all of my guests here today mentioned some incredible points and then shared their own perspectives and opinions on what happened. These opinions and these perspectives are theirs. And while they may be shared, I do want you to know that this is a call to action. We are not saying these things because we are trying to get on you for not doing things, but we are trying to empower and encourage you and really let you understand that your life matters. Your life, your rights, your freedoms are on the line. You have to wake up and realize that everything that is happening in our world, just like they said the things in the past are happening in the future, these are same old principles with new frameworks that we cannot allowed to keep putting us behind. We all were built, and they built this country with the fact that we're all created equal, except we're still fighting on what that idea of equality is. And the way we can really fix that is through voting. I don't want anyone to sit here and say they didn't hear about it, that they didn't know about it, because it is so important. You can get registered to vote, I believe, as young as 17. If you are someone here in Florida, when you get your driver's license, they will ask you if you would like to register to vote at the same time. I'm not sure how it is in other states, but I would assume it is the same framework. It is important that you take the time to go out and make sure you're registered. If you're registered, take some of your friends, make sure they're registered. Make sure everybody knows what is going on, because just as much as you click a button and share a reel, you share a funny meme, you share something that's going on, you sit on your phone for hours and hours on TikTok, take that same time to learn about the things that are going on in your world. Take time to see what's going on in the legislature, what's going on in the Senate, what's going on in the House, what they're putting in these new sessions, because everything that they talk about in some way or another is going to affect you or someone that you know. Everything that we see, everything that we have talked about is encouraging you to really engage in the importance of being civically engaged. So I'm going to tell you, like the title says, voting. It matters like never before. Do not be left behind complaining about what happens if you do not get out there and exercise your right to vote, because it's important. It's now or never. Use your voice. It is important. Thank you so much for tuning in today to today's show. I really, really do appreciate everything that everyone has said. I'm going to give everyone the space to share ways people can connect with them, just in case they want to get connected with you and be able to hear more about your journey. We can start with Travius, then go to Nia, and then end with Miss Marie.
Hey y'all, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Travius L. Copeland, or Instagram at underscore dot Travius, but the E is a three. And or you can just search up Travius Copeland. It's gonna pop up, I guarantee you. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't be too much on the different social media sites, but you can reach out to me through those sites.
You do definitely want to get connected with Travius. He is someone to know and to be in your network. What about you, Nia?
Hi, everybody. You can reach me at my email, Nia Terry at spelman.edu. That's NIATERRY at spelman.edu. I will answer as soon as I see the email. So please just make sure that you heard about me from Kaylin's radio show, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you guys have. And remember to go out and vote this year and next year and all the following years.
All right, Miss Radigan.
And also follow me on social media at Lyrical Marie. You can follow me on all social media as Lyrical Marie or Marie Radigan. My LinkedIn is Marie Radigan, and my email as well is marie.radigan with 2 N's at gmail.com.
Please get connected with her. She is definitely someone that you want to have in your road, in your route, and all of these amazing guests that were here today, I believe, shared some important information. And it is so important that you really get connected with those that you know. Last but certainly not least, I always ask that you connect with me on all my social media platforms, which are YouTube, by subscribing to the KCK Inspiring Moments with Kaylin radio show. Also by going to Instagram and following me at Kaylin Cares 15, on Facebook and LinkedIn at Kaylin's Caring Connection, and at the website, which is www.kaylinscaringconnection.com. I'm always here and open, ready to talk, ready to hear you out. So please do not feel like you cannot reach out and you cannot hear what's going on. We really do appreciate you for being on, and I just hope that you've enjoyed this show. Thank you again for tuning in. I appreciate your support and hope that you enjoy these empowering conversations. Always know that I care about you, and if no one else has told you today, I mean no one else has told you, know that I love you so, so much. Thank you for listening, and catch me on the next KCK Inspiring Moments with Kaylin radio show. Bye-bye.